July 18th, 2025. Dawn had barely broken over the western Pacific when the sky tore open. 12 hypersonic missiles, 32 electronic warfare drones, 6 loitering munitions from North Korea, 1 submerged Russian Kilo-class submarine running silent just outside the Philippine Sea. Together, they painted a single target, the USS Gerald R.Ford, 100,000 tons of steel, the most expensive warship in history. And the living embodiment of American maritime dominance was no longer just a deterrent. It was the bullseye. At exactly 4:16 in the morning, wave after wave of threats converged. From the deck of the Chinese aircraft carrier, Luoyang-01, 12 YJ-21E missiles ignited with a blinding roar, each one capable of reaching Mach 5 within seconds. Simultaneously, from inland silos along North Korea's eastern coastline, 4 medium-range hypersonic glide vehicles streaked across the stratosphere, flanking the assault from the north. And beneath the surface, data link signals silently pulsed from a Russian submarine, relaying telemetry from a classified network of undersea sensors. It was not a random assault. It was a multi-axis ambush, a convergence of firepower, deception, and electronic chaos, the first tri-national strike against a United States carrier since World War II. But what came next was not panic. It was not confusion. It was precision. This is the untold story of the moment the Pacific ignited and how the United States answered with fury, silence, and discipline. The attack did not happen in a vacuum. For months, Chinese satellite constellations had observed carrier operations east of Taiwan. The USS Gerald R.Ford had been conducting joint exercises with Japanese and Philippine naval elements, a move Beijing labeled provocative. But the strike itself wasn't just about regional tensions. It was the culmination of a silent alignment. In the weeks leading up to July 18th, intelligence intercepts indicated a surge in data sharing between the Chinese Eastern Theater Command and North Korean strategic forces. Simultaneously, Russian undersea activity in the Sea of Japan spiked, particularly from Project 636. 3 submarines, known for their stealth and cruise missile capabilities. Behind the scenes, a shadow pact had taken form. China provided the backbone hypersonic munitions and launch platforms. North Korea provided unpredictability drones and mid-range missiles from a direction the United States rarely sees coming. Russia provided silent cyber jamming protocols, sonar interference, and possibly the final targeting data. On the surface, the USS Ford was sailing in international waters, just 217 nautical miles east of Taiwan. But in the minds of Beijing's war planners, it had crossed an invisible line, a line they intended to redraw with fire. This wasn't just an act of war. It was a message to the entire Indo-Pacific Alliance. We can blind the eagle. We can silence its eyes, shatter its armor, and change the rules of deterrence. And so, at 4:16 in the morning, the first hypersonic wave hit. 4:16 in the morning. Radar officers aboard the USS Gerald R.Ford were already on high alert. 2 hours earlier, long-range electromagnetic scans had picked up faint distortions, ghost signals, skimming the edge of the electromagnetic spectrum. Likely decoys. But when the screens lit up in crimson bursts, there was no doubt. This was real. This was war. From the south, 12 Chinese YJ-21E hypersonic cruise missiles closed in fast, each flying at over Mach 5. From the north, 4 North Korean KHGV's hypersonic glide vehicles entered the upper atmosphere at a steep attack vector, aiming for the Ford's escort screen. Seconds behind them, 32 UAVs flooded the airspace, each loaded with decoys, jammers, and magnetic pulse generators, designed to blind sensors and fry targeting systems. Then came the unexpected. 6 loitering munitions, launched from disguised barges off the Ryukyu Island chain, swooped in just 60 feet above sea level. They did not appear on radar until they were within 2 nautical miles. Powered by quiet electric fans and guided via satellite bounce from a North Korean relay station, they acted like kamikaze phantoms. Inside the USS Ford's Combat Information Center, red lights stung the eyes. Alarms wailed, and operators barked bearings and intercept vectors. Commander Rachel Dean took the EW station, shouting countermeasure authorizations into a headset slick with sweat. At 4:17, The first Chinese missile detonated 95 yards off the port bow. The shockwave slammed into the hull like a thunderclap. No breach, no fire. But the tremor was unmistakable. The ship had been kissed by war. 2 seconds later, one of the loitering drones smashed into a signal mast above the flight deck. It self-detonated mid-air, releasing a fine cloud of electromagnetic confusing metallic chaff. For 3 heartbeats, the Ford's radar systems blinked, then reconnected. From the escort line, the USS Thomas Hudner, a guided missile destroyer, sprang into action. The Aegis combat system launched 5 SM-6 interceptors, each one streaking into the sky in a corkscrew formation. 3 Chinese missiles were vaporized at 41,000 feet. But the enemy wasn't just attacking from above. Beneath the waves, sonar techs aboard the Ford's Undersea Defense Division detected something moving slowly. Deliberately, just outside the carrier group's outer ring, it was silent. No active propulsion noise, only the subtle oscillation of a towed sonar array. It was Russian. No torpedo was fired. No weapon activated. But its presence alone froze the fleet. They were being observed, evaluated, and, perhaps, marked for something worse. The entire initial strike lasted 89 seconds. But in those 89 seconds, the world order shifted. A United States carrier had been directly targeted by a coordinated enemy alliance. And the American response, it was just beginning. At 4:18 in the morning, the USS Gerald R.Ford transformed from flagship to war machine. There was no shouting. No panic, only momentum. Sailors moved like clockwork. Trained hands cycling through launch sequences and ECM protocols without hesitation. Every second mattered. Every action was deliberate. Every mistake could mean the loss of the entire carrier group. From the Ford's outer escort ring, USS Thomas Hudner and USS John Basilone initiated Layer 1 intercepts. 5 SM-6 interceptors were already in flight. Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles launched in tandem, targeting low-altitude UAVs swarming the inner perimeter. Within 14 seconds, 8 drones disintegrated mid-air, raining molten debris into the sea. But the threat kept evolving. From the forward deck of the Ford, CIWS turrets close-in weapon systems roared to life. 2 6-barrel Gatling cannons fired over 4,000 tungsten rounds per minute, cutting the dawn air into a shimmering wall of metal. 1 loitering munition, undetected until Lima Ratis yards out, broke through the jamming haze, diving straight toward the flight deck. It was destroyed just 200 yards from impact. The shockwave rattled bolts across the steel superstructure. Below deck, sailors in fire retardant suits stood ready. Not one flinched. Not one moved without purpose. They were drilled for this moment, trained in a doctrine born from the fires of Pearl Harbor, sharpened through every war that followed. By 4:21, radar clutter cleared just enough for a clearer picture to emerge. Of the 12 Chinese hypersonic missiles, 4 were intercepted, 3 missed, and 5 exploded in proximity, 2 closer than acceptable. Of the 4 North Korean glide missiles, 2 had been neutralized, 1 splashed down, and 1 was still unaccounted for. Damage superficial, casualties 0. But the psychological shift was absolute. This was not a rehearsal. This was not provocation. This was the opening salvo of a coordinated tri-front assault against the United States Navy. At 4:22, Commander Rachel Dean issued the order that would change everything. Push past defense. Begin offensive protocol. The Ford would not wait to be attacked again. It would hunt. It would blind. It would strike. At 4:23 in the morning, the USS Gerald R.Ford ceased defending. It began reclaiming dominance. Above the carrier, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye circled high at 32,000 feet. Its rotating radar dish swept the battle space with near-omniscient precision. For the first time since the missiles launched, clarity returned. The digital fog lifted. Targets sharpened. Ghost signals vanished. Within 90 seconds, a full situational combat picture was re-established. And then came the revelation. The attack had not originated from mainland China. It had come directly from the Chinese carrier Luoyang-01, repositioning stealthily southeast of Taiwan. Worse, the telemetry confirmed Russian data signatures, Piggybacking off the Luoyang's satellite uplink, North Korean missile trajectories had also synced perfectly with Chinese launch timing. This was not opportunistic. This was orchestrated immediately. Two EA-ATNG growlers, already airborne, banked toward the southern corridor. Their mission, electromagnetic retaliation. Seconds later, targeted jamming pulses were launched across the same frequencies the enemy drones had used. 6 loitering munitions still lingering near the Ford's outer ring lost contact and spiraled into the sea. Powerless and dead. In the Combat Information Center, Commander Rachel Dean stood frozen. Eyes locked on the live signature of the Luoyang carrier, now just within range of a pre-programmed strike package. She didn't blink. They blinded us. They wanted a kill shot. They failed. Now we make them disappear. The order was relayed across the Pacific. In the skies over Guam, 4 F-22 Raptor stealth fighters, loaded with anti-radiation missiles and air-to-surface kinetic warheads, scrambled into formation. Their engines whispered across the upper atmosphere, cloaked by radio silence. Simultaneously, from deep beneath the Philippine Sea, a Virginia-class attack submarine, the USS Missouri, received uplink clearance. Its mission position beneath the Luoyang fleet, map acoustic signatures, and prepare for contingency launch. And still, above it all, space shifted. From Cape Canaveral, a dormant asset was activated, a classified low Earth orbit satellite tasked with directed jamming of enemy Beidou satellite bands used by Chinese naval forces. Within minutes, Chinese targeting data began to skew. Compass errors increased. Drone formation desynchronized. What had begun as a multi-nation ambush was about to end in an American reckoning. At 4:37, the countdown began. 0 hour was set for 1440 hours. Local time. The full force of the United States military would strike air, sea, space, and silence. 1440 hours. Local time. The Pacific Ocean did not roar. It went quiet. Far above the clouds. 4 B-1B Lancer bombers, guarded by a shield of EA-18G growlers, approached from high altitude. Having launched hours earlier from a forward base on Guam, their trajectory had been carefully curved through a corridor of radar shadows, refueled midair by KC-46 Pegasus tankers, and guided by satellite-fed vectors from the E-2D Hawkeye still orbiting above the Ford. Each Lancer carried 2 AGM-183 AARRW hypersonic glide missiles, each missile capable of Mach 7 speeds, terminal phase maneuvering, and a kinetic punch equivalent to 2,000 pounds of TNT. Their target, Luoyang 1, China's pride, its first true carrier flagship, now stationary in contested waters, surrounded by 2 Type 05 destroyers, protected by jamming buoys, anti-submarine barriers, and a multi-layered defense grid. It was not enough. Minutes earlier, a stealth MQ-25 Stingray drone, flying just above sea level and disguised in sea clutter, had transmitted final targeting data, its sensors locked onto the ammunition magazine buried beneath the Luoyang's flight deck. Then it cut all transmissions and disappeared into the void. At 14:41 and 32 seconds, the order was given. 2 ARRW missiles dropped silently from the belly of the first Lancer, midair. They ignited, vanished into supersonic arcs, and became invisible to conventional radar. The Luoyang's defense grid responded too late. At 14:42 and 17 seconds, the first missile punched through the mid-deck, detonating beneath the main arrestor gear housing, sending shockwaves through the hangar bays. The second missile struck 6 meters from the magazine, rupturing internal fuel lines, triggering a cascade of secondary explosions. At 14:43, a vertical plume of fire over 600 feet high exploded into the sky, followed by 3 concussive chain detonations. One blast sent a flight deck elevator cartwheeling into the ocean like a snapped bone. Within minutes, the Luoyang was listing heavily starboard. At 15:01, it was half submerged. By 15:07, it vanished beneath the waves. 75,000 tons of Chinese steel, gone in under 18 minutes, aboard the USS Gerald R.Ford. There was no applause, no cheer, only silence. Pilots watched the horizon. Headsets removed. In the Combat Information Center, a single line blinked on the display, target neutralized. No counter-launch detected. Rear Admiral Marcus Vance stood in the center of the bridge and spoke just once. Mission complete. Broadcast nothing. Let them feel the silence. Around the world, that silence echoed. In Beijing, state media went dark for 72 hours, replacing headlines with archival naval footage. The phrase Liu Yang 01 was scrubbed from every search engine in the country. Over 36,000 posts disappeared from Chinese social media in under 6 hours. In Moscow, encrypted traffic spiked Russia's general staff exchanging high-priority signals across multiple fleets. In Pyongyang, missile sites went into lockdown. No launch. No movement. Only stillness. In Tokyo, Canberra, and London, military officials already embedded with United States Pacific Command confirmed the kill in real time. No United States ships were lost. No sailor killed. No retaliation required. Only one message remained clearer than any declaration of war. You do not ambush a United States carrier and walk away. You do not shift the balance. We erase it. By dawn on July 19th, the Pacific Ocean was calm once more. But beneath 19,000 feet of salt water, the wreckage of Liu Yang 01 rested in silence. No beacons, no distress signals, no survivors. Only an oil slick and drifting debris marked the final breath of what had once been China's boldest naval ambition. And yet, across the globe, the political waters churned. In Washington, analysts didn't look at missile footage. They studied doctrine. At the Pentagon, Rear Admiral Marcus Vance spoke in a closed-door briefing. They tested our cohesion. They gambled on speed and surprise. We answered with unity, timing, and silence. Not a war of noise, but of precision. The sinking of the Liu Yang was more than an event. It was a signal, one that rippled from the bunkers of Pyongyang, through the satellites of Moscow, and into the war rooms of Beijing. This was not about escalation. It was about clarity. A tri-national ambush had failed. Not because of luck. Not because of overwhelming firepower, but because the United States Navy had fused air, sea, space, cyber, and submarine warfare into a single, cohesive doctrine, one that could react, retaliate, and neutralize in under 30 minutes. The world had just witnessed a doctrine forged in silence. Not noise. A playbook built on readiness. Not arrogance. And above all, a reminder. American dominance isn't broadcast. It's demonstrated. As the Ford Strike Group repositioned across the Western Pacific, carrier groups near Okinawa, Guam, and Diego Garcia shifted into high readiness alert. Allies didn't need reassurances. They had just seen it. Everyone had. So to those watching from afar in Tehran, in North Korea, in Moscow, know this. You can launch first. You can deceive. You can attempt to blind us. But the moment you touch a United States warship, you rewrite the rules, and we erase the board. This is not just deterrence. This is the American difference. If you believe in the power of presence, precision, and discipline, subscribe now. Leave a comment with your country. And stay locked in with U.S. military tactics for more untold stories of naval warfare, American doctrine, and the battles that shape our future. We are not just defenders of the sea. We are the ones who write its rules.